Everything starts with prayer. Our journey starts with prayer. Every day starts with prayer. Before our feet hit the ground in the morning, we should start with prayer. Before we go to sleep at night, we should start our rest with prayer. Every minute of every day should be in prayer. And yet we don't always think that way, do we? I am leading a small group called Journey 3, and we are in the middle of digging deeper in our walk with God. And last week we had a really good conversation about prayer that we decided to keep going for a couple of weeks. But I want to read to you just a brief introduction in this session. It says, talking about prayer, in the same way that Jesus interacted with God, so too can we. Prayer is far more than a one-way monologue, listing our wishes before God. Rather, prayer can be as dynamic and intimate and engaging as the way we interact with those that are closest to us. Prayer involves waiting, listening, remembering, affirming, pleading, petitioning, thanking, confessing, worshiping, and so much more. Wow. This, I don't know, as we dig deeper, I don't know whether I have had that big of a list when I go to God. Sometimes I don't even know what to say, so I just say, God, you know. Or I say, God, thank you for all things. God, in the middle of the hurt, thank you for meeting me there. I'm reading another book called The Methodist Way, and it's written by Ken Carter, who was a bishop. And in that, it says, so often he was asked during trials and tribulations of life, where is God? There's this story in the book, and he's talking about at a place where there was bloodshed and during war, and people were killed. And as somebody was watching a child being executed, somebody else was heard saying, where's God? And the answer came to the person listening and came from this bishop in retrospect, who said, God is right there. God is right there with that child, suffering right along with that child. There are times in our lives that we say, where is God? And we have to remember God is right there. God is in the middle of your suffering. He suffers when you suffer. He rejoices when you rejoice. Can you pray in the middle of your suffering when you don't understand what is going on? Let me read to you again about prayer. It's not just about our wish list. That's what this says, right? It's about interacting with God. And as we interact, we build a relationship with Him. Prayer can be as dynamic and as intimate as we want it to be. But you know what? It takes vulnerability and complete honesty to have that relationship. Says prayer involves waiting, so we can wait and listen. Prayer involves remembering, affirming, pleading, petitioning, thanking, confessing, worshiping. How is your relationship with God through prayer? It starts with prayer. Your relationship with God starts with prayer. Hearing God's voice starts with prayer. Getting to the point where you know more of who He is starts with prayer. There's another place in this session where it says we must remember a foundational aspect of prayer. Prayer doesn't actually begin with us, it begins with God. Wow. We thought that it began with us. After all, everything begins with us, right? It says God has already initiated an interaction with us through a variety of ways and means, but most fully through His Son, Jesus. Through faith in Christ, we've become the beloved child of the King, who is always welcoming us into His presence. Because prayer is a continuous response to God's interaction, we have confidence that God hears, knows, and presents to our interactions with Him, though it may feel like we're the ones initiating the conversation and that maybe God is silent. The truth is that God is always waiting and inviting us to engage with Him. He is willing, ready, and able to listen, not just to our words, but also to our hearts. So this week, I have a challenge for you. Recognizing that God is the one that initiates the conversation and is waiting for engagement. What are you starting your time with? God is waiting for you. No matter what your circumstance is this week, no matter what it is today, or an hour from now, or 2 days from now, or 5 days from now, the challenge is to remember that every minute of every day should start with prayer. Your challenge this week is to start with prayer, maybe first thing in the morning, maybe when you feel like all is lost in the day, maybe when you feel like God isn't listening. Start with prayer and have a blessed week.